Welcome back, Sebastian here. So time for my review for the 2023 British Grand Prix. So it was Verstappen on pole with Norris alongside him on the front row. Norris had an excellent start and actually took the lead right from the start of the race. And Norris, Hamilton as well, had a really tricky opening lap. He went wide going into turn 1, I believe, and he actually dropped all the way down to 9th. There was a really interesting mix of tire strategies, but that being said, most of the front runners were starting on the mediums. And even with Norris in first and Piastri in third, Piastri was starting to put pressure on Verstappen right away. So it looks like the McLarens had a bit better warm-up to start the race. Lap 4, however, Verstappen starts to put pressure on Norris right away. And as soon as DRS is enabled, lap 3, Verstappen overtakes, or a bit after DRS is enabled, Verstappen overtakes Norris at Brooklands for P1. So fairly easy move with DRS. And at this point, Russell was also starting to put pressure on Leclerc, who was starting to draw back from the McLarens and Verstappen despite starting P4. Lap 7, Piastri was told to hold position and that the McLarens are going to work together to try to get the best result they can for the team. Let's see, Russell was unhappy with Leclerc at this point, thought that he was moving under braking, but there's no investigation or anything from there. And then Hamilton overtook Alonso at Brooklands for P7. So I think really showing quite early that Mercedes had pretty good pace, and also that the Aston Martin had a really rough day, probably their worst race of the season in terms of race pace. And then Hülkenberg damages his front wing with some contact from Perez, and he pits to replace that and gets new tires. Didn't look like any one driver was especially at fault there, just looked like it was a bit of accidental contact. Lap 8, Gasly starting to put pressure on Alonso as well, so not a great sign for the Aston Martins. And Piastri, the gap between Piastri and Leclerc was 3.9 seconds, so really nice gap between the McLarens and the Ferrari. So I was actually very surprised by the McLaren's race pace today. And Norris was only 0.9 behind Verstappen on lap 8, so about 20%, about 20% of the way through the race, and Norris is almost within a second of Verstappen, so showing how good that McLaren's pace was. Lap 10, really rough race for Ocon, and he pits and retires the car with a mechanical issue. Lap 11, light rain in 2 to 3 minutes, similar to what the conditions were like in Q2, according to Verstappen's radio engineer. But that being said, it didn't really make much difference in the race, and I didn't really notice it at all, except for a couple moments where you could see it on the camera lenses. Lap 13, Perez overtakes Stroll for P12 at Stowe, and Verstappen at this point starts to pull away from Norris. So that tire life and that race pace, I think, on the Red Bull is definitely much more superior than on the McLaren. So at some point, it was kind of inevitable that Verstappen would be able to start pulling away from Norris. Lap 15, Tsunoda pits, and here I noted a few drops of rain on the camera. Lap 16, Aston Martin, really poor pace, but Russell, I thought, on the Mercedes, really good pace on the soft tire. And Perez overtakes Albon for P10 as well on lap 16. Lap 18, I thought this was interesting. The gap between Verstappen and Norris was 3.9 seconds, and the gap between Piastri and Leclerc was 4.5 seconds, showing that basically the McLarens were actually closer to Verstappen than they were to the third fastest team. So showing just how good their pace was. Ferrari then decided to have some fun with strategy. They tell Sainz that they're thinking Plan B. Sainz says he forgets what Plan B is, and so I thought that was quite funny. Lap 19, Leclerc pits and comes out in 12th. In lap 21, Norris is very happy with the tires, and the team's trying to figure out, how many more laps can he go? Can he hold this pace? Is there going to be like a cliff at some point? But Norris says he's happy. He says the times are consistent and just wants to continue. And it turns out that was the right call. Verstappen was then told on the radio to basically ignore Ferrari's strategy, because he came on the radio saying that he saw the Ferraris pit and basically, asking, do we need to do anything? And he's basically told, just ignore them, just ignore the Ferraris. And they also showed that Russell was virtually ahead of Leclerc. So if Russell had pit at that point, he would have come out ahead of Leclerc. So basically getting the overcut done despite being on soft tires. Lap 24, almost half race distance and very few stops at this point. I think there was a lot less tire deg than expected. The mediums were a really, really nice race tire. Lap 25, Zhou pits for hards and comes out in 18th, and Leclerc basically comes up to the back of Stroll. Lap 26, Leclerc then overtakes Stroll for P11 at Stowe, and Sainz pits and comes out 12th, 6 seconds behind Leclerc, so does lose some time compared to where the gap between them before Leclerc's pit stop. Lap 28, medium, I thought was the best tire, and I thought that's kind of why no one wanted to pit. With so many drivers starting on that tire, it makes sense to try to prolong that distance as long as possible, especially if the tire life is good. De Vries pits to 17th for medium, so a bit of an interesting call there. And lap 29, Russell pits for mediums as well. So this is kind of the point where instead of going the medium soft or the medium hard one stop, it actually became a let's do the medium soft one stop. So I think really the tires were much more durable, and I don't know if this is Pirelli's new construction or if this is just a 2023 tire thing. But you know, it's interesting and something that we'll see how it evolves in the coming races. Perez, pits for softs and comes out just behind Leclerc. Piastri on lap 29, the same lap, pits for hards. Really nice 2.4 second stop. And I thought at this point a real chance of a podium. So I basically jinxed him. Sorry, Piastri fans, I jinxed him by writing that down. Lap 30, Sainz fastest lap, but he's stuck behind Stroll. And really a real mix of hard and soft tires, I thought. For the drivers that started on the mediums, there was a real mix of strategies for which tire they were choosing for their second tire of the race. Lap 31, Russell overtakes Leclerc around the outside of left field for P8. Gasly and Stroll both pit as well. And then this is where the big turning point in the race happens, lap 32. Magnussen basically stops under the bridge on the hangar on the Wellington Straight, and his engine just blew, and he basically didn't really have any chance to react or move it to a better position. So he's basically stuck right under the bridge on the Wellington Straight, and this leads to a very, very long safety car. First it was a VSC because they thought, well, maybe he can keep going, but no, it's a full safety car. And then Leclerc pits again for softs, so a bit of an odd call by Ferrari to pit him again for softs, especially when the tires have been holding on so well. Norris pits, Hamilton pits as well, and comes out just ahead of Piastri after the pit stop. So Piastri, who's basically been in a podium position for the entire race, loses that position because of Hamilton pitting under the safety car. And Alonso moves up to 6 as well. Verstappen and Hamilton both pit onto the softs, but the McLarens have pit on hards. So Norris, I think, was a bit worried about that, being on the hard tire versus softs on the Verstappen and Hamilton, and it did have a bit of a scare. But, you know, for those of you who talk about, you know, those who probably lost out because of the strategy, be it Piastri, be it Russell, be it Leclerc, reality is that, you know, going long on a stint in case of a safety car has always been a strategy for such a long time in this current era of Formula One that we're in. And, you know, that's why drivers make use of it. That's why you don't come in early, because you never know when a safety car is going to come out. And it just so happened that a safety car came out right at this point. And, you know, those drivers who stayed out, who managed their tires, managed to benefit from it. So that being Verstappen or Hamilton or Alonso. And then I know the safety car was taking forever because there's no exits under the bridge on that straight. So they basically had to bring a truck, put it on the truck and drive it off. So that took quite a while. Lap 38, the safety car finally ends. So we basically had a 12-13 lap sprint. And Hamilton was on the back of the Norris right away with that soft tire warm-up being so much better than the hard tire. He tries to go around the outside of Copse, doesn't let it stick, and Verstappen, meanwhile, has had a great restart, and he basically drove off into the distance. Lap 40, Stroll overtakes Gasly for P11. This was the one where Stroll actually was investigated for whether he actually went off the track and gained an advantage. I thought it was kind of 50-50. Gasly kind of pushed him right at the edge of the track and didn't really give him a car's width on the outside. And I think Stroll and Gasly were very, very close, so I couldn't really say for sure which car was ahead at that point. But there was no penalty for that. Hamilton then sticks it down the inside of left field, and Norris manages to stay ahead. So that was, he basically cuts back on Hamilton going across that straight to Copse, and I thought it was very, very close to contact, but a very good move by Norris. I think that was a necessary move to stay in second place. Lap 43, Norris was hanging on his hard tires. Stroll gets a black and white flag as well for track limits. Perez overtakes Sainz at Club, and then in a space of about 4 or 5 corners, Albon and Leclerc both overtake Sainz. So I don't know if something happened to Sainz, but his pace just kind of dropped massively, and he was on the hard tires, so it's a bit strange there. Lap 45, Gasly overtakes Sainz around the outside of left field, and Sainz re-overtakes him at Copse. Let's see, yeah, so Gasly then starts going very, very slowly. I wrote down maybe a puncture, but no, that's not what happened. Turns out Stroll basically went off the track, came back on the track, and then basically clattered into the side of Gasly, probably damaging his rear suspension. So a really clumsy move there by Stroll. I'm not sure what he was thinking there, but he was given a 5-second penalty for that. Lap 46, Perez overtakes Alonso for P6 at Stowe. So a really good move there by Perez to get some kind of recovery going. Yeah, let's see. Lap 48, Gasly then retires and pits with that damage from the contact with Stroll. And Norris and Russell both get black and white flags. So they have to be very careful. No more track limits or they get a 5-second penalty. Lap 50, this is when Stroll's 5-second penalty was announced for causing a collision. Final lap of the race, Albon was very, very close to Alonso and looking to make a move. And Leclerc goes for a move on Albon at Brooklands, but Albon manages to stay ahead somehow in his Williams. Verstappen then takes a checkered flag. Norris second and Hamilton third, with Verstappen getting the fastest lap of the race. So pretty interesting race. I thought, that middle part of the race before the Magnussen retirement was honestly kind of so-so. It wasn't the best racing, I thought, wheel-to-wheel racing. I thought a lot of tire management. I think the field kind of really spread out. It would have been interesting to see how the tire strategies would have worked out in the end without the safety car. That being said, safety cars are definitely a pretty high possibility at most Grand Prix nowadays. So it's not really much of an issue either way. So let's take a look at the result of the race. Verstappen wins 6th race in a row, and I believe 11th race in a row for Red Bull. I believe that ties the MP44 record from 1988, I believe. Yeah, 1988 for 11 races in a row. So it'll be interesting if they can get a new all-time record next time out in Hungary. Norris second, first podium of the season. A really, really nice result for him. Hamilton third. Pretty good result for him, but then that being said, a little bit lucky with the safety car. Fourth, Piastri, really good result for him. He's going to be really gutted he didn't get his first podium in F1. Fifth, Russell. Sixth, Perez. Alonso, 7th. 8th, Albon. 9th, Leclerc. 10th, Sainz. 11th, Sargent. Best result in F1 for him, I believe. 12th, Bottas. 13th, Hülkenberg. 14th, Stroll. 15th, Show. 16th, Tsunoda. 17th, De Vries. And your 3 retirements were Gasly, Magnussen, and Ocon. So not great for the Alpines. Both of them retire. So let's taking a look at the Drivers' Championship. We have Verstappen in first with 255 points, 99 points ahead of Perez in second with 156. So we're only about halfway through the season, and Verstappen already has a 99-point lead. So he's basically on track for about a 200-point lead in the championship, which would be a new record. That being said, it's too early to be thinking about that now. Third, Alonso, 137 points, and fourth, Hamilton, 121 points. Fifth, Sainz, 83 points. Sixth, Russell, 82 points, and seventh, seventh, Leclerc with 74 points. Stroll still in 8th with 44 points, but Norris is coming up very close behind him with 42 points. 10th is Ocon with 31 points, and moving up to 11th is Piastri with 17 points after a massive haul of points stay for him. 12th, moving down one spot, is Gasly with 16 points, and 13 moving up, or actually staying in the same position, but overtaking Hülkenberg is Albon with 11 points. Hülkenberg is indeed in 14th place with 9 points, and then Zhou and Bottas 15th and 16th with 5 points apiece. Although I believe Alfa Romeo has 11 points. I'm not sure how that could be. No, I believe they have 10. Yeah, 10 points. Tsunoda has 7. I'm too tired. 17th Tsunoda with 2 points. 18th Magnussen with 2 points. And then 19th and 20th Sargent and De Vries yet to get off the mark. Just taking a quick look at the Constructors' Championship. Red Bull is, of course, first with 411 points. Mercedes second with 203 points. Aston third with 181, Ferrari fourth with 157. McLaren move up to fifth, leapfrog Alpine, 59 points for them, sixth Alpine with 47. Williams move up to seventh, tied with Haas on 11. Haas, of course, in eighth with 11 points. Ninth, Alfa Romeo with 9, although that should be a 10. I'm too tired, I can't even count. And then 10th, of course, is definitely AlphaTauri with 2 points. So overall, a bit of an interesting race. I thought the last race in Austria was a little bit better. But that being said, the wheel-to-wheel action was still really good. And there's I think Silverstone just has so many corners where you can have take different lines, and you can actually battle through more than one corner, which we saw multiple times today. So that's all for my review of the 2023 British Grand Prix. A really interesting race as always. I'll be back tomorrow with my power rankings after the British Grand Prix. So thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.